Previously on Crime Adjacent. On Sunday morning, January 7th, 1996, exactly 2 weeks after the discovery of Tommy Coulet, another 911 call came into the Ridgewood Police Department. It was Daniel Palmer again, the local developer and the town's wealthiest resident. He was out in the valley at nearly the exact same spot Tommy was found. According to the transcript of the call, Daniel Palmer was trying to explain to the dispatcher that he'd just found another body, but he seemed to be failing at the task. Maybe it was a bad connection. He was on his cell phone. Maybe Palmer was getting a little pissy. Maybe the dispatcher hadn't had enough coffee or was just finishing up a long shift. I don't know. But this is one of those calls that have become all too familiar in true crime cases. The caller is trying to say something. The dispatcher cuts him off. The caller tries again. The dispatcher gets the information wrong. The caller tries yet again, probably a little annoyed at this point. I mean, it's an emergency. And the dispatcher, who should be used to emergencies, gets annoyed right back and tells the caller to just calm down and stop being rude. They're only trying to help. I've heard this before. Too many times. I can't tell from the transcript whether Daniel Palmer is upset that he found another body in his valley, like what an inconvenience for him, or whether he's simply annoyed at the dispatcher, who keeps interrupting or sometimes misstating back to Palmer what Palmer had just said. For instance, according to the official transcript, the recording of this one was never made public, not like the first one. Palmer said 3 times that he just discovered the body of another man. And each time, the dispatcher asks whether it's a person or an animal. Palmer says 3 times back that it's a person. It's obvious. Arms, legs, a head, clothes. And the dispatcher asks whether it's an accident or a mountain lion attack, as if Palmer should know, or those are the only options. Palmer is patient at first, I think. And then, finally, he must have had enough. He snapped, "Jesus Christ, just send someone." And then he hung up. The transcript stops there. I mean, I get it, sort of. No one knows a short phone call like this is going to be dissected word by word, silence by silence, for years to come by investigators and crime sleuths and conspiracy theorists. No one is acting their best when they discover a body, let alone 2 of them just weeks apart. It's odd. And at the same time, this is a small town. The last homicide, before Tommy, happened 20 years ago. The dispatcher was used to noise complaints and bar fights, not serial murder. This was new to everybody. According to police records, the dispatcher immediately called the chief, Frank Ricci, who immediately called Detective Al Williams, who then, in turn, immediately called Officer Ida Jones, who was training for detective at the time. They all hurried out to the valley that Sunday morning. Jones said that when she and Williams and Ricci saw the body, they knew. They knew immediately that it was the work of the same killer. She said, with Bobby, the first Bobby, we knew we had a monster on our hands. Here's the story. But first, you can access ad-free listening and a members-only community for behind-the-scenes information at our Patreon page, patreon.com/crimeadjacent, including information about our monthly reading group, where we can all learn together and nerd out on the convergence of true crime and profiling and pop culture. Go deep or go home. I'm here for it. I hope to see you there. From San Francisco, this is Crime Adjacent, the never-ending true crime story told weekly. I'm Chase Patrick. If problematic 911 calls have become part of true crime, so has this. Serial killers living next door, blending in, living anonymously among the very people they are hunting. In the coming episodes, I'm going to explore a few cases that might feel disconnected at first, but they have one thing in common: catchable killers who slipped through the cracks for decades. Not because they were some Hollywood trope of genius evildoers. No, far from it. But because of their victims and who, as a society, we deem worthy of justice. When I think of Ridgewood, I can't help but think of Rex Heuermann, the suspect in the Gilgo Beach serial murders in Long Island, New York. According to police, Heuermann killed up to 11 women dating back to the early 1990s. He grew up in Massapequa Park and would live in his same childhood house until he was eventually arrested in 2023. For decades, he blended in, commuting back and forth to Manhattan for his job as an architect. Heuermann spent his teen and early adult years working along the beaches and marshes of Long Island. He knew the area well. He knew where and how to find sex workers, his usual targets. And he knew exactly where to dump their bodies, often in pieces, in different areas. The infuriating part of this case is just how catchable he should have been. Back in 2010, before Heuermann emerged as the suspect, the bodies of 4 missing women were discovered, which then led to the discovery of 7 more. The cases caught attention, finally. The New York Times gathered together experts and profilers, hoping to create a composite image of the anonymous killer, someone for the public to look for. Here's what they said. The killer would be white, male, 20s to 40s. He'd be married, well-educated. He'd hold a solid job, be financially sound, and have a good car, something to hunt with. He'd also live in the area and know it very well. Also, he'd have solid social skills, be well-spoken. He'd be convincing, able to talk women into meeting him on his terms to get into his car. This fits Heuermann to the letter. Neighbors and family members and coworkers said he could be short and angry and strange, but also personable. A Netflix documentary on the case aired footage of Heuermann giving an interview about his job in Manhattan. Just a large, dopey, smiling, inert lump of a man. Not the killer with a computer full of kill plans in a basement full of secrets. Due to abject police incompetence and corruption, Heuermann remained free for years longer than he should have. Way back in the early 2000s, police had witness statements about a specific Chevy Avalanche and a large, angry white guy harassing and abusing sex workers. It should have been enough. I mean, just how many incredibly large white men were there in the general area of Gilgo Beach who also drove the same color Chevy Avalanche and knew the area like the back of their hand, like they grew up there? Not many. In fact, it was this very information that eventually led the police to Heuermann in 2022. They tracked him, they tailed him, they got a sample of his DNA by snagging a leftover crust of pizza he had thrown away in a garbage can. Everything matched. They arrested their man in 2023, years after the first witness statements pointed to him. But he was killing sex workers, and the police... You should really check out the documentary, Gone Girls, on Netflix. It's disturbing. I think of this case a lot and how he slipped through the cracks because practically the same thing happened in Ridgewood. With Tommy Coulet, the first known victim back in 1995, police thought maybe they had a mugging on their hands, a robbery gone wrong, or even a gay lover's quarrel. Yes, the damage on his body looked like overkill, and the token taken from his clothes seemed incredibly strange. But in the end, police had nothing. This was just an odd, violent one-off, and the killer probably slipped back onto the freeway, disappearing from quiet, peaceful Ridgewood forever. That all changed on January 7th, 1996. That all changed with Bobby Calvin. Robert Bobby Calvin was born on January 1st, 1966, and lived in Ridgewood his entire life, except for a short stint at college and then an even shorter stint in Los Angeles. He attended K.I. Smith Elementary and then Williams High School, where he excelled in debate, theater, and football. Tall and muscular with great hair and a playful smile, he was the star quarterback and also the lead role in practically every school musical. I talked to his brother, Patrick, who still lives in town. He said, Bobby was that one kid in school that everyone thought would be a star, would make it, you know? They even wrote it in the yearbook, most likely to succeed. Bobby did, in fact, make it. Big time. After high school, he attended Stanford University, where he received a full-ride scholarship for football. Like most Stanford athletes, he was also a dedicated scholar. Off the field, he boasted a 4.0 grade point average in business economics and computer science, a still emerging field in Silicon Valley in the 1980s. On the football field, he became the first-string quarterback his sophomore year and nearly carried the team to a national title. A knee injury sidelined his dreams of the NFL. Patrick said it was like Joe Theismann. Everyone knew the moment it happened, that it was all over. According to all accounts, Bobby was oddly content about the injury that ruined his football prospects. Most people would be shattered. But Bobby had other plans. He always wanted to be an actor. He figured he'd play football to pay the bills, and then once he got too old or his body gave out, he'd switch full-time to acting. That was Bobby Calvin in a nutshell. A plan to use the NFL as a side gig for Hollywood movie stardom would be a pipe dream for most people, but not for Bobby. It seemed achievable, completely reasonable, in fact. Honestly, in the 1980s, there were quite a few templates to follow. Carl Weathers played for the Oakland Raiders before becoming Apollo Creed in Rocky. Brian Bosworth, remember him, was a Seattle Seahawk before he made a few action movies. Who could forget Mean Joe Green and his Coke commercials? And of course, there was O.J. with the Naked Gun and the Towering Inferno and all those Hertz commercials, before everyone knew the full story of abuse behind the scenes. And then, well, you know the rest of the story after that. This is all to say, for Bobby, he had a plan and a big dream. By all accounts, he was genuinely excited to put all his energy into acting, his true calling. Yes, the football injury sidelined him so much earlier than he ever imagined, but he couldn't wait to head south to Hollywood. Patrick shook his head and smiled, saying, "I had no doubts. My baby brother could do anything." To Patrick, or honestly anyone around Ridgewood who knew Bobby and saw him on the football field or watched him on the high school stage, his big plans seemed entirely possible, likely even. They were excited to see him on the big screen at the downtown theater, as if it was inevitable. Winnie Freeman, lead reporter for the Ridgewood Recorder and a Stanford alum herself, she wrote many articles about the case and about Bobby Calvin over the years, hoping to keep the murders in the public eye, hoping someone might call in that critical lead or tip that solves the whole thing. She got to know the Calvin family very well. She told me, Bobby was definitely one of Ridgewood's brightest stars. It was like the whole town was proud of him. Bobby graduated from Stanford in 1988. He was so excited. He couldn't contain himself. He told everybody. Literally that very same day, after the ceremony, he packed his white Honda miniwagon to the roof and headed south for Los Angeles, eager to get started on making his dreams come true. When I returned to Ridgewood in 2023, I met his brother Patrick at Mix's Diner downtown, where we ate pancakes and sipped coffee. In the beginning, Patrick seemed eager to tell his brother's story. He delighted in bragging about his younger brother's stardom and easy charm with which he practically ruled the world. From photos I'd seen, they shared the same playful smile. Patrick was easy to talk to, engaging. I imagined Bobby was as well. But here's the thing. When Los Angeles came up, the mood shifted. Patrick quietly studied his coffee. He practically whispered. He never told me what happened. Patrick said he had a good idea all these years later, after Weinstein and such. Casting couches, hotel suites. Bobby never actually told anyone what happened, but within a year, he was back in Ridgewood, his light noticeably dimmed. No more talk of sports, no more talk of acting. Bobby had spent his entire life quietly singing one show tune or pop song after the next, as if rehearsing for his next big role. It didn't take much to get him to sing louder for everyone, and he delighted in belting out audience requests at parties. And then, nothing. Just silence. It was as if Bobby's voice in his entire life had a clear demarcation point. Before Los Angeles and after. Bobby took a job for the local school district and was in charge of technology. It was his job to make sure each school had a computer in it, if not an entire room full of them, even though half the kids just wanted to play Oregon Trail or tinker around with that drawing program, Paintbrush. God, I loved Paintbrush. Eventually, Bobby would be the first to advocate for internet access and would set up classes to help students in the new world of websites and the information superhighway, as they called it at the time, the World Wide Web. It sounds so quaint now, connecting stranger to stranger. Nothing could go wrong. Patrick said he got into computers and never really looked back. Remember, he studied computer science. He liked this field. And Bobby threw himself wholeheartedly into everything. I asked Patrick if he knew his brother was gay, if that might have been what attracted his killer. Patrick nodded. He said that like Tommy, from what they'd heard, their families always knew but never really talked about it. Like Tommy's father, Patrick remains haunted by the exact same what-ifs. What if he had been more supportive? What if he had simply asked? Patrick wondered, would he have gone out there to Hunter Hill? I couldn't help but notice this is exactly what Bob Coulet said, almost verbatim. The questions, the heartache and broken lives, they haunt. This is exactly why I try not to valorize or glorify serial killers. Yes, it's important to know how they operate and how we can stop them, hopefully before they even start. But it's important to remember, a killer never takes just one life. Those left behind, like Patrick and Bob and so many other families across the country caught up in this case, they're changed forever. This is, honestly, a gray area I'm not sure how to grapple with in true crime. How to tell these dark stories so that we might survive them without falling into the darkness ourselves. Any tips appreciated in the Patreon chat or a monthly reading group. I'd love your thoughts. As far as anyone can tell, Bobby's last day is practically a mirror image of Tommy's. Just ordinary. So much, in fact, that Patrick wonders if the killer stalked him at home. If the killer waited for him outside the office, following him, watching, rather than simply meeting him by happenstance at Hunter Hill. I mean, what were the odds? Two men from Ridgewood randomly running into the same killer at the same rest stop 20 miles away? Patrick believed the killer had to be a local. Was it possible Bobby and his killer crossed paths around town? Maybe even knew each other? How many of the victims' families had seen Rex Heuermann around town? Or the Golden State Killer? Or Israel Keys? These were the married suburban killers next door, blending in. Patrick said he had been plagued by this very thought since the day his brother died. Tommy's father, Bob, told me the same thing. If the killer was indeed a local man, how many times in the intervening years had Patrick seen him around town? Maybe even talked to him. Ridgewood is a small town, remember? Patrick said, I couldn't shake the thought every time I chatted with someone. I'd quietly study them while we're talking and I'd think, did you kill my baby brother? Everyone he talked to for 30 years. Joan said the similarities between Tommy's death and Bobby's were shocking. It gets a little graphic here for a bit, be warned. Like Tommy, Bobby's car was found abandoned at Hunter Hill, where he had parked the night before, on Saturday night, January 6th, 1996. Like Tommy, the killer somehow convinced Bobby to get into the car, then drove him all the way back to Ridgewood, to the valley. And just like Tommy, Bobby's chest was caved in, practically flattened, while the rest of his body remained untouched, his plump arms and legs looking almost like demented balloon animals compared to his steamrolled midsection. He had a large bruise on the back of his head, just like Tommy. He'd clearly been surprised at some point. This time, however, there was no question about whether Bobby was alive for much of the assault. The autopsy revealed that the amount of blood found in his lungs left no doubt. The killer stunned Bobby with a blow to the back of the head, knocked him out cold maybe, and then stomped him enough to cause severe internal injuries before he simply stopped. The killer just stood there, watching, as Bobby drowned slowly in his own body. Next time on Crime Adjacent. Detective Jones said that just like Tommy, police quickly reached a dead end when it came to Bobby Calvin. Just like Tommy, they retraced his last steps, his last few weeks in fact. Bobby had no enemies, no sour relationships. Everyone liked Bobby just like Tommy. The only thing connecting these men was secret lives, a rest stop, a late-night encounter, a quiet valley, a horrible death, and the man who had discovered both of them. Remember to review and like Crime Adjacent wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out our Patreon page to unlock ad-free listening, bonus information, or to become a part of the biggest, nerdiest true crime and criminal profiling reading group you could ever hope to find. Until next time, this is Chase Patrick from San Francisco with a reminder: you'll never unhear what happens next.